Hi, I'm Talicza.
And I'm Rachael, and this is Transatlantic Crime, a true crime podcast that covers stories from each side of the pond. Every week, we will both cover a separate story with a running theme.
Disclaimer, this podcast will contain swearing and details that some people may find offensive. If you are of a sensitive disposition, listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Transatlantic Crime.
Crime. So close. Right, how are you, Rach?
I'm
What's
good.
on fire?
What's on fire? LA is on fire. There's smoke and it doesn't feel good in LA right now.
No, like usually when I think of California being on fire, I think of the bit like up north away from you or like the rurally bit. I don't think of like LA being on fire.
LA is still rural on the outskirts. There's still a lot of hills and mountains and stuff like that. So we're still pretty close. Yeah, we're getting a lot of the smoke and it feels gross.
Yeah. So have they advised you to do anything? Do they send out like a warning or anything?
If you check the weather, it says like
Don't breathe.
unsafe. Yeah, unsafe to be outside or, something like that.
Fuck.
Yeah. If you have asthma or breathing problems, it's just best to not go for a jog. Also, it's like really hot here too, so just
Jesus Christ.
we're on fire. We're literally on fire.
What is happening?
I
I
know.
literally feel like we've slipped into the seventh circle of hell. Like, and nobody's given us the memo. Trump's president. Everything's on fire.
People shooting people.
Yeah, Boris Johnson is the Prime Minister. Also, I know this is not really a problem in comparison, but basically, we got a knock on the door yesterday, and this guy was like, "Hiya, we're from a wedding company, and we've got a Rolls Royce, and it's broken down. Would we be able to park it outside here? Do you know who these parking spaces belong to?" I was like, "Well, they kind of belong to everyone in the flats. Like the number is on the space. So if you knock on that door and see if you can borrow it."
Yeah.
And my car was parked in my space just near my house. And he goes, "Is that your car?" I was like, "Oh, yeah." And he was like, "Oh." And I said, "Look, I'll tell you what, we're having our tea," which was true. We were having dinner.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Look, why don't you have a knock on the other doors and then come back and tell me if you have no luck and I will move my car and you can park it there. But for how long?" He was like, "Oh, we'll come and get it tomorrow, like 12 midday at the latest."
Yeah. Which is today for you, right?
Which is now. So it's now 7:15 here. So it's 7.25 hours later than he promised.
Oh, he hasn't picked it up yet?
Nope, fucking Rolls Royce still in my driveway.
What?
The car cost.
He was lying. He's from the mob.
It cost 350 grand. That car costs more than most houses. Like, this isn't a problem I've ever encountered. Like, how do I get this Rolls Royce off my property?
Get it away. This seems sketchy. Really expensive car just parked, no protection or like, covering it or anything.
It's such an expensive car.
And they haven't picked it up yet.
So we messaged them. Well, he gave me a card. I was like, okay, we need to get this card and we need to call them. So I left the card in my car like an idiot. So we had to walk to my car, which isn't parked outside my fucking house anymore, because old Goodwill gubbins over here decided to fucking give them my space. But to go and get the card, and then we like called the number, and it was like, "This number isn't in service." I was like, "What the fuck? What the fuck?"
Sketchy, Talicza. What have you got yourself into? You're in the mob now.
But he was like, "Oh, we'll give you a bottle, for like having it on your drive." I want a fucking magnum of champagne.
Yeah.
Like,
give you the car.
I want to ride around in the Royce. But anyway, so we basically managed to get hold of them on Facebook. So they are like a real company, but they just can't be fucked to update their business cards. We managed to get hold of them, and me and Carly both messaged them on like Facebook, Instagram, and we called a different number and no one answered. Eventually they got back to Carly and just said, "We're en route." That was it. And she went, "Okay, do you know what time?" Didn't reply. So like the current situation is I am waiting for this Rolls Royce to be removed from my property so I can park my fucking car there. Like, if you don't get us some booze, I've just been utterly mugged off and I'm never doing anything nice for anyone ever again, ever.
What happened to the wedding party if the car broke down?
Oh, the wedding was over by that point.
Okay.
They'd already done the wedding. But I'm like, it can't be that fucking broken down because you just moved it into my space. So what? It won't drive to Birmingham, but it'll drive here.
Yeah. I have so many questions. Where was the wedding?
Oh, I don't know, man.
What broke down? The car seems fine. It looks fine on the outside.
I've put a picture up on Instagram, obviously.
Yeah.
I'll put a picture up on the Transatlantic Crime Instagram.
Yeah.
And you can't appreciate how big it is. It's like a bus.
It looks huge.
It's gigantic,
You could
mate.
fit a family in there.
It's honestly like a Hummer. It's just a big fucking white Hummer reminding me not to be nice to anyone ever again. Anyway, and you know what's going to happen? Some fucking chump is going to knock on my door in the middle of this recording and ruin it. And then I'm going to have a big noisy tow truck fucking up the recording. And I bet you he'll give us like a fucking £4 bottle of white wine. Like, I just can't.
Yeah, what is that? What's that really cheap one that we used to drink when we were young?
Lambrini.
Yep, that's what they'll give you.
Got it in one.
But like a huge one, it's like the size of your head.
Yeah, but that's because that's how much you need to get drunk because it's about 3%.
Yeah.
Well, this is like, honestly, the past 2 days have fucking driven me to drink. Like, I just went up the shop and bought myself a bottle of Prosecco to just nail during this recording because I'm like, I cannot fucking deal with 2020 anymore.
Get ready for a fun recording, listeners.
The thing is, I am best when I'm bitter. So
yeah, I agree. I'm the same. Too bad I'm not bitter anymore.
Oh.
Too often.
Open a window.
Yeah. Just look outside.
Just piss yourself off. Right. Okay. I wanted to say there's a documentary that's come out apparently called The Vow. It's about the Nexium cult. Have you heard of them?
Yes.
The ones that got branded.
Yep. The girl from Smallville was in the cult.
So dodgy. I'm going to try and find that. It's HBO, so hopefully it'll be on Now TV.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give that a listen.
Yep.
I listened to a really good podcast called Finding Nexium or Escaping Nexium. I can't remember which. The guy on that podcast, he knew a girl who was in it.
Right.
And so, like, he knew her from school.
Yeah.
So he just got in. Now he's a journalist and he got in touch with her. And so he's got, like, amazing access to her and her story and her husband. And they both left. Fucking creepy ass cult, that one.
I listened to that podcast, too. It's really good.
It is so good.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch the documentary.
Yeah, called The Vow. So I'm going to have a go on that. Yeah. Okay. All right. Enough whinging. Right.
Yeah. Enough bitching about fires and podcasts and Rolls Royces.
It'll still be there in a week.
Yeah.
Fucking bastards.
You could sell it. Like, just email them and say, if this isn't moved by tomorrow, we're going to put it up for sale. Cash sale.
I emailed them saying, if you don't move it by tomorrow, I'm going to get the parking people that run this parking thing and get them to tow it. Like, I don't know if they can tow it. I think they can just give them a ticket that they don't even have to pay. But hopefully that's put the willies up them enough so that they move. But yeah, I will keep you updated on the Rolls Royce fucking saga.
Yeah.
Why? Why did I answer the door?
Why'd you say yes?
I don't know why I said yes. Like, I just couldn't.
I wouldn't have answered the door the second time.
I know. That's what we should have done.
I'm asleep.
I fell out the window.
My dog is sick. We have coronavirus.
I caught coronavirus just now off you.
Okay.
Right. What are we doing this week?
This week is revenge. Revenge stories.
Yes. You're first.
Yeah. All right.
You're looking at me like you're expecting me to talk.
I just had this fear that I got the wrong subject this week or the wrong theme, and it was next week's. For a split second, I was like, "Oh,
I could see it on your face, like the pure fear." Rachel, if you did, I would just tell my story and then just say, "Yep, that was revenge."
I mean, what murder isn't revenge?
It's a bit of a cheat subject, really.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I actually found some pretty good stories.
I think I found a corker.
Yeah?
This
okay.
week.
Good.
Come on then. Come at me.
All right. This one is The Bus Driver Hunter.
The title's very exciting. Go on then.
We're going to go to a place called Ciudad Juarez, Mexico.
Okay.
We're going outside the U.S., but just a little bit because it's a border town. So
You better be back.
Bending the rules a little bit.
I better be able to spit at the border from here.
I think you can. You can.
Okay, fair.
Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. A little backstory on this location. So,
Yeah.
I'm just going to call it Juarez. That's what a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people call it. It's a border town on the Rio Grande, right next to El Paso, Texas. Juarez is the fourth largest city in Mexico, and it has a population of about 1.5 million people. Juarez is a major point of entry and transportation into the U.S. for all of central northern Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So in the past 30 years, Juarez has gained a violent reputation. The Juarez cartel was the dominant player within the Mexican cartels, and with its close proximity to the U.S. border, it controlled a large percentage of the cocaine traffic from Mexico into the United States.
I am fascinated with cartels.
Yeah.
Fucking love it.
Have you watched
Narcos?
Narcos?
Yeah. So I've watched the first series with Pablo Escobar.
Yep.
And I literally was convinced I could speak Spanish after I watched it. I was like, fucking ha ha ha. Like, so.
I'm going to be attempting a little bit of that today in this story.
Okay. That series, if you've never watched it, it just makes you want to get in a bath it makes you want to get in a jacuzzi with some hookers and take some coke. It's like the most indulgent thing ever.
Yeah. That's like when I watch Mad Men, I just want to
Yes.
drink whiskey and smoke a cigarette.
If I could smoke while we're doing this podcast, I would, but I can't because I have to open the window and then it'll be really noisy and it'll ruin the recording. But if I could smoke in this room without feeling very guilty that I was smoking without a window open, I'd be fucking smoking, trust me.
Someday we'll do an episode where we're in the same location.
That would be nice.
Yeah, we'll be able to do that. So anyways,
yeah.
Some of the bloodiest fighting happened between the Juarez and the Sinaloa cartels in and around Juarez, which included a serial murder site called the House of Death, where executions were committed by members of the Juarez cartel. Also, throughout this story, I'm going to say different numbers. There are no confirmation of numbers because so many people have died and been murdered and hidden in mass graves or disappeared. And it's like the Mexican government either lie about the numbers or they
genuinely don't know.
That people don't know. Like, I read so many different articles and it was like 300 people, 500 people, 1,200 people when they're talking about the same year or the same...
Mate, it is absolutely savage. Like, when you think... When people are crossing over the border into America, when you look at the life they are leaving, you fucking get it.
Yeah,
Like, if you have half a cell of a heart, you can say, like, okay, no, I really wouldn't want to be just fucking seeing people mowed down and their heads cut off in front of me and fucking people having tires put on them and being set on fire, like, because of drug wars.
I'd like
and
for my children
to
have a better life.
I'd like for my children not to join a cartel.
Yeah.
Yeah, you totally get it.
Yeah. So, according to one article, in the past 30 years, there have been over 8,000 deaths reported over this span of time.
Ma'am, so bad.
So this includes the femicide. Do you know what femicide is?
Killing just women?
Killing women just because of their gender.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So the murder and disappearances of around 1,400 girls and women in Juarez. Starting around 1993, an unusually high number of girls and women went missing in this area, with their bodies later being found in the desert, bound, raped, and strangled, sometimes with their own shoelaces.
Is it like a show of power?
We'll talk about it a little bit.
Okay, sorry. Always.
It probably is for some, well, we'll talk about, but about 60% of the missing and murdered range from ages 14 to 18 years old. Some were bodies found alone in the desert, and other bodies were found in mass graves. Some of the murdered women were victims of domestic abuse, murdered by their husbands or boyfriends. But about a third of the victims are thought to be connected to a serial killer or killers in the region, with some saying that it is a serial killer connected to a government agency.
Shit.
Others think it may be someone within the police or just the police in general, because the police are pretty sketchy there, especially in Juarez.
Yeah.
They would drive around too and like unmarked cars. Like, you don't know when they're the police sometimes.
Just, yeah, fuck living there.
I know. Another theory is organ smugglers, which we've talked about before, which are linked to at least 14 of the bodies found. I don't know if that number is correct. I read that in like a 2013 article, so the number could have gone up since then. Who knows?
Probably.
So the state police have done a really bad job at collecting evidence. Barely anyone has been questioned, and no one has been arrested in relation to many of these murders. A human rights activist named Asma Yahanger said in 1999, the arrogant behavior and obvious indifference shown by some state officials in regard to these cases leaves the impression that many of the crimes were deliberately never investigated for the sole reason that the victims were only young girls with no particular social status and who were therefore regarded as expendable. So many of the missing and murdered women came from towns outside of Juarez using the bus, mainly the 4A bus route that would travel through the desert to bring them to and from school, their jobs, or a day of shopping. A majority of the women on the bus route were traveling to maquiladores, or maquilas, which are factories along the border that manufacture products in Mexico, and then those products are shipped to the U.S. There are a lot of those in Juarez. I think that's why it is such a busy city, because there's a lot of jobs there in the factories.
Yeah.
Women often worked night shifts at these locations, and the 4A bus in particular would drive through the spot in the desert where at least 100 female bodies have been found.
Ugh.
That's creepy. Just being on that bus in general.
The death bus.
Yeah. And it wasn't just that bus. It was like all different bus routes. But like just knowing that bodies were found the day before or that day or whatever, and you're going to work or school. Just creepy.
It's just like the highway of tears, isn't it? People are like, oh, well, why do they do it then? Why do they get the bus? Or, you know, why do they hitchhike? Or why do they? Because they've got no other fucking choice.
Yeah.
Like that is their only way to go to work, to earn money,
right,
to be able to feed themselves and their family. Like that is literally their only choice. It's that or sex work, which again, you get blamed if you get killed while you're doing that.
Yeah.
Like there's just so much victim blaming. Like it's insanity.
It is.
It's
it
like,
really is.
Imagine a world where you didn't have a choice. So many people just don't imagine that.
Yeah.
And it's really frustrating.
A lot of the accounts of women who were raped or abused or whatever, they would go to the police, and it was typical what people say about police, where it's like, well, what were you wearing, or it was your fault, or
why were you walking in this dark neighborhood?
Exactly. And in one article there was a girl who was like, a police officer told her that unless she was badly beaten or bruised or could show the actual abuse, then they weren't going to take it seriously.
Well, no, because the other person will just say they consented.
Right.
Fucking hell.
This has led news reports to claim that some of the sexual abuse and disappearances have either been caused by or assisted by Juarez bus drivers, who would often double as drug dealers. There are also countless accounts from women feeling unsafe on the local buses due to reports of a high amount of sexual abuse from bus drivers, and I'm sure other passengers too, specifically on these desolate routes through the desert where no one would be around to help.
Like, I don't know if I've told you this before, but I think they said it on Small Town Murder, which is like another one of my favorite podcasts.
Yeah.
Two male comedians. And I've heard like some people say, oh, I don't like it because it's a bit laddie. It's a bit like guys and bros and da da da. But they've got a really massive lesbian fan base for some reason. I don't know why. But they mentioned that they had a massive lesbian fan base. And the guy on there, he said, he's a comedian, and he said that another comedian friend of his said, once I was walking through like the Bronx or, you know, bad neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I had 50 grand in cash on me in a bag.
He's talking about Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle
Is
told
he?
this joke. Yeah.
I'm so glad that I know who the original person is. But yeah, he was saying like he was walking through, well, maybe you can tell it better than me.
Dave Chappelle had a friend who he did a job for, or he did something for him.
I think it was weed. It was buying weed.
Yeah, or
drugs.
It was something like that, but he got paid 50 grand or whatever it was, a huge amount of money, and he had to put it in his backpack. and go across the city or
Yeah.
get on the subway and go wherever. And he was so afraid, like looking at everyone, not knowing what to do, knowing that
Because someone's going to steal my fucking money.
yeah. And he said, like, that's what it's like to feel like a woman, just
Yep.
knowing that you have this really valuable thing at all times.
That someone might rip from you.
Yes. Yes, and just having that weird fear and
Like
sense.
paranoia.
Exactly. Just
But it's not paranoia because it happens.
And we can tell when people are being weird.
You can tell when people want your 50 grand / vagina.
Yep.
I've said to a gay friend of mine, I said, that's what it's like having a vagina. It's like carrying around 50 grand in cash.
Mm-hmm.
You're fine if you're in your house or if you're in your car and the car's locked, but if you're walking through a bad neighborhood or a dark alley, you shit yourself a little bit.
Yeah. Or even sitting on a bus.
Yeah. You're like, don't fucking touch my backpack.
Yeah. Don't come near me.
Don't come near me.
Stop looking at me for so long.
This is none of your business. Yeah, I thought it was a great analogy.
It is. Yeah. To make men realize what it feels like. It definitely...
You have to talk about money.
Yeah.
Not your soul, not your feelings, money. Someone's trying to take your money. Like that. That's my worst nightmare. Ah!
Yeah. No, not that.
Yeah. Sorry, I've had like 2 glasses of Prosecco.
That's okay. So several bus drivers have been arrested in connection with some of the killings, although at least one has had his conviction overturned and another died in prison before he was sentenced. So... again, not much is being done or has been done.
Well, imagine how many buses go there to and from there in the years this has happened, and 3 people?
Yeah.
Come on.
So the large amount of corruption in law enforcement and government has led people in Juarez to take control of the situation, or try and take control of the situation, forming grassroots organizations, protests, and activism to bring attention to the femicide. One woman in particular took matters into her own hands in 2013.
Yes, bitch. I'm going to enjoy this story.
On the early morning of August 28th, 2013, that's tomorrow.
Is it?
Yeah.
Happy anniversary, murder lady.
August 28th, 2013, a woman in her 40s with dyed blonde hair, possibly a wig, a baseball cap, a plaid shirt, and jeans boarded the number 718 bus. She pulled out a gun and shot the bus driver point blank in the head.
Oh. Well, wait there. He might be innocent.
I don't know. Like, she
seems sure.
Yeah. She escaped quickly, and the bus driver died at the scene. Almost 24 hours later, the same woman boarded the same 718 bus, rode it for a short time, and as she exited, pulled out a gun, and according to one witness, I'm going to speak Spanish.
Oh, do it.
The woman yelled, "Ustedes se creen muy chingones," which is,
okay,
you think you're so tough. You guys think you're real bad, don't you? And she shot the driver twice in the head. And then she escaped before anyone could catch her, and witnesses would not say how or where she escaped to.
Yes! Although, can I just preface this with, I'm really sorry if he was innocent.
I read one account, and it was like, this woman seemed like she knew exactly what she was doing.
Well, yeah, sounds like it.
She did it for 2 different guys that it seemed like she knew.
Well, she could have got on any bus, I guess, but she got on specific buses.
Exactly. It was the 4A bus. It was like that route, too.
Yeah.
So one day later, news publications in Juarez and El Paso received an email from someone calling themselves Diana la Cazadora de Chauffeurs, or Diana Hunter of Bus Drivers.
Fuck.
She admitted to the killings.
This is a film.
I know.
What a good film this would be.
I feel like it could be already. I mean, this happened in 2013, so there's got to be some kind of, even in Narcos or something, maybe they've made like a reenactment of it or something.
Yeah, let's look out.
So this caused fear in many of the bus drivers in Juarez, with close to 50% of drivers not turning up to work in the week following these murders, and those that remained working were fearful of women coming onto the bus.
Well, if you haven't done anything wrong.
Exactly. But also, imagine them thinking twice now before going up to a woman and sexually harassing them or trying something.
Just good.
So she instilled some fear.
I feel like Bill Clinton needs one in the kneecap, as does Trump. And Epstein,
Bill
just obviously, well, he's
Cosby.
dead. Bill Cosby needs one in the upper thigh. He's particularly awful, quite close to the cock. It's really scary. There's actually a documentary about people in Northern Ireland who are like in gangs, and the gangs control the neighbourhoods. And if anyone does anything wrong, the gang goes around and shoots them in the kneecap.
Wow.
I should move to Northern Ireland. It seems like I'm pretty into this idea. If I was King, Rachel, there'd be people who'd be first against the wall.
Sexual abuse? All right. There you go.
Off with his kneecaps.
Police released a sketch of Diana, but to this day, no one has come forward, and Diana has not killed since.
Wow.
There is currently a map tracking victims of femicide in Mexico within the last 10 years, with a count of 10 femicides occurring per day in 2019. That's nuts.
Fuck me. Can you not?
Yeah. This year's International Women's Day in March, women in all parts of Mexico, including in Juarez, protested femicide and abuse over the course of 2 days. In Mexico City alone, there were close to 80,000 women that took part in the protests. Diana, the bus driver's actions instilled fear and respect in Juarez, and even admiration in some of the women of Juarez. So I'm going to read her email to close out this story.
Yes, please.
Her email to the media in 2013 read, "You think that because we are women, we are weak. And that may be true, but only up to a point. Because even though we have nobody to defend us, and we have to work long hours until late into the night to earn a living for our families, we can no longer be silent in the face of these acts that enrage us. We were victims of sexual violence from bus drivers working the maquila night shifts here in Juarez. And although a lot of people know about the things we've suffered, nobody defends us, nor does anything to protect us. That's why I am an instrument that will take revenge for many women, for we are seen as weak, but in reality we are not. We are brave, and if we don't get respect, we will earn that respect with our own hands. We, the women of Juarez, are strong."
Oh my
And that's
God.
the story of Diana the bus hunter.
I'm going to cry. That's so... I mean, I know she killed 2 guys, but still, that's so beautiful. Oh, God. I remember I was at International Women's Day in Bristol. They did a march, and my boyfriend's old housemate, Maria, she did a speech, and it was basically very much along the same lines of that. It was like, we're victims of sexual violence. Up until 100 years ago, we had to fight for our right to vote. We are in domestic servitude. The reason there's a gender pay gap is because women do unpaid work in the home. She's like, we get paid less because we're women, we get respected less because we're women, we get less opportunity. It was an all-inclusive speech as well. It was for trans women, it was for women of colour, it was for disabled women, queer women, it was for everything. And I was just like, oh my fucking God, it was one of the most powerful and beautiful things I'd ever heard. And she is Spanish, but she was reading it in English, and she didn't have a microphone, so she was just like speaking really loud. And I was just like, core. It just got me right in the feels.
Yeah.
It's so inspirational. Like,
it is. And it's also like, you feel it. I think as a woman, you feel it. You know exactly what they're saying. And you know, when I read this email or like listening to that speech, you know the passion behind it. You know all the feelings behind it.
Yeah, and it's like you know, like the Black Lives Matter protests and stuff, like when people do speeches at those, it's like you listen to them as a white person, you listen to them and you're like, fuck, that is so powerful and so like so good that you're voicing this, but then you can't actually relate to it on the level that people of color can. And so I imagine, like, if you were a person of color listening to that, how it would get you, you know, and how it would like fucking inspire you, like seeing somebody shouting out those words. And like, that's how I felt about the International Women's Day speech. Like,
I mean, I've been to a few of the Black Lives Matter protests in the past couple of months, and people are crying. People are
Fuck yeah.
feeling it, you know, and yeah, we can't relate because we're white, but you know, you hear the passion and you hear everything behind it, and it's just like, yeah, we're here for you.
Oh my God, good God, Rach, how do you do it? Fuck. Yeah, it was a good times. Like, people were saying that, like, COVID and stuff, it's really depressing, and that is true.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like behind the scenes, there's been a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, and it's making people face up to things within themselves and then things that are going on. Like, when you're working 9 to 5 every day, you don't have time or the space to look around you and see what's going on.
Exactly that. Like, the world has stopped for a second, and it's given people a chance to look around and see what's happening, and actually, like, you know, for example, the Black Lives Matter protests went on when people aren't supposed to be in the streets.
They're still going on.
Yeah, and like, it went on here when, pardon me, sorry about that. I'm really sorry you had to hear that. So
usually I cut that out, so
it's fine, whatever. I'm making a heartfelt speech and burping. So the world stopped for a second, and it does give you a fucking chance to take stock. And it's, you know, because massive corporations aren't at the moment like giving everything they've got, it's actually left like a little lull of silence, and these voices have risen up and they can actually be heard.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, if I'm looking for something positive to come out of this absolute shit show, like, for me, that's probably it.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Hopefully it creates a change. Like, there's been a lot
I think it will.
Every day, especially in America, there's people sharing things every day. And obviously, a couple of days ago, there was a man shot in the back.
Yes, and do you think that would have been reported on if it wasn't for the fact that the Black Lives Matter movement has taken the headlines? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, that may have been swept under the rug, like, in the past. And it just feels like, fucking hell, it was only like 2 seconds ago that you were choking George, like, on the floor.
Yeah.
What the hell?
I know.
Can you give it a rest?
Yeah.
It, like, highlights, like, the frequency of these things.
Yeah, it keeps
because, like you say, they have been happening that frequently, but it's only since the Black Lives Matter movement has taken, like, a real fucking surge and been shown in the public eye that you now go, oh my God, another one. Oh my God, another one. Another case of police brutality. And before then, I don't think we would have heard about that. I think it would have been swept under the rug.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so that's my 2 pence.
Diana, the bus driver, I feel like is kind of obviously she did a very violent thing, but that's also what is going on in the country right now, is like people are looting and rioting, and they're saying, oh, you're taking away the attention by doing the bad things. And it's like, well,
shut the fuck up. You've been doing bad things forever and a day. Like, don't like it.
How did the suffragettes do anything? They did the same kind of things. How did civil rights come across? Like, how did that get pushed forward? By doing the same kind of things.
You want me to not make a fuss?
Right.
That's what you want.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, what else is anyone supposed to do? Like, you won't take notice in the nice ways. Yeah,
Mate, it's fucking white supremacy. It's just white supremacy.
It is.
Like, it's Western white supremacy.
Yeah.
Anyway, fuck them. Right, so I just heard the dog bark, and I think that might be the Rolls Royce, man.
Oh,
it fucking better be. It better be.
You should take your podcast recording stuff with you and just.
Hello, Rolls Royce man. What do you have for me?
Interrogate him.
No, I'll text Carly in a minute and see. I'll be like, did we get any booze? Fucking better have. So my story this week. Okay, so this is really trippy, and I couldn't really find anything on it apart from there's news articles from the BBC, there was news articles like Independent, The Guardian, The Mirror, like all the British papers covered it, and also a really kind of random podcast which is American, and it's called Blood and Wine, a true crime podcast. So they did one called Vigilante Murders, which is very similar, I suppose, to what we're doing right now. But they covered. It's called Blood and Wine.
There's another one called Wine and Crime.
Unfortunately, we didn't invent the true crime podcast.
Yeah.
much as I wish we had. But yeah, so they do I mean, on the, what's it called, Wine and Crime? On that, do they have a different wine every week and talk about it, or do they just drink wine?
I believe that they do, yeah, and they talk about it a little bit, and they
Yeah.
also kind of put it on theme to what they're talking about.
Oh God, that sounds complicated.
Yeah, also they're from Minnesota, and I kind of know the girl that does it.
Yeah. Mate, I reckon there's a degree of 6 separations. Like
You
every girl will know another girl
definitely.
that does a crime podcast.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm going to start the story. Jane Pickthall was an 18-year-old from Scotland, and she was already a young mother. She met and fell in love with a Chinese waiter. So I can't find his name, which feels a bit racist, but I really have looked. It's just not there. So they moved from Scotland to Wales in 1983, and they had 2 children of their own. And the youngest was called Chi Ming Sek, but everyone called him Marky.
Okay.
So eventually they broke up, and then Jane moved into a flat in Caerphilly in Wales with her 3 children. She got a new boyfriend, and he was called David Gaut. And in October 1984, he started living with them. And in Jane's words, they got on marvellously. So on the night of February 28th, 1985, she went out with her friends, and David agreed to babysit for the children. So during that night, both the sets of neighbours reported hearing really loud noises and shouting coming from the flat.
Okay.
One witness said, "To me, it sounded like doors slamming or feet stamping on floorboards, and it was really loud. There were bangs and crashes, that type of noise." I should say that in a Welsh accent, really. Should I try it?
Do it.
Wait there. Right, let me get in the zone. To me, it sounded like doors slamming or feet stamping on floorboards, very loud. There were bangs and crashes, that type of noise. All right.
That was great. It was awful. It was awful.
It was awful.
What's occurring?
What's occurring? Loads of banging and crashing. Right. So I have gone out with 2 Welshmen. So you should, one from North Wales and one from South Wales. So I am thoroughly covered in terms of knowing what I'm doing.
Yeah, me too. I went to uni in Wales, so.
You did go to uni in Wales, and you have got a good Welsh accent. Jane came back home after her night out at 1:30 a.m. and everything seemed absolutely fine. So she got into bed with David. I don't know why this detail is in there, but they had sex and then they fell asleep.
Okay.
Like everywhere you read, it's like they had sex. I'm like, okay.
And it's not relevant.
I suppose it kind of becomes relevant in a ghouly way later, but
Okay.
yeah. So in the morning, Jane went in to check on her 17-month-old son, Marky, and she discovered, and I'm going to tell you now, this is rough. If you're not up for really harsh stuff, then skip. But she found his cold, battered body was stuck under a chest of drawers that had fallen over.
Oh.
So she was in such shock that she got him free, and then she sat for an hour rocking him before she snapped out of it, and then she called for help.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so she was just like distraught. David said it was an accident, but he had clearly tried to make it look like one by placing Marky under a cabinet that had fallen, because Marky's injuries were consistent with being tortured and beaten.
Oh.
The medical examiner who conducted the autopsy said that Marky had at least a pint of blood in his abdominal cavity from a laceration of the liver, and this could have been caused by a severe blow with a fist or from being thrown very hard at a surface. Marky ultimately died of multiple injuries, including a broken arm, injured liver and spleen, and a fractured skull. He also had burns on the soles of his feet.
Oh, poor baby.
So he is in a real state, and he's 17 months old. So he's like not even 2. David pleaded not guilty, and he even tried to blame Jane for the injuries.
What? So that's kind of where it is a necessary detail that they had sex, because it's like, how could you do something like that and then...
Yeah, he'd done that, and then he pretended everything was normal, and then he had sex with her while her son was dead in the next room.
Oh my god.
And he knew that, so that is completely and utterly fucked. Yeah. So in court, Jane stated, "There was no doubt in my mind that David was guilty of murdering my son."
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that she's got her head screwed on, because like sometimes in these cases I hear of women who don't think things happen. And I'm just like, are you fucking high? On July 18th, 1985, David was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life with a minimum of 33 years. the judge said, the person you murdered was a defenseless little baby, and on the jury's finding, you not only murdered him, but also tortured him. So David Gaut is a piece of shit. He was 54. So he was 21 when the crime happened.
Yeah.
And he's now 54 and he gets paroled. So in November 2018, after he spent 33 years in prison, he was moved to New Tredegar near Caerphilly in South Wales. This was just 11 miles from the location of his original crime.
Whoa.
That doesn't seem cool because
No.
Wales isn't that big. Yeah, like you probably know people. Like, I don't know where his mum is, but if she wasn't that old, you weren't that old.
Yeah.
Like God knows where she is, but you've just moved 11 miles away from her, which is not fun.
Right.
So the flat he moved into was owned by the local government. And apparently, according to a neighbour, there were always people moving in and out. He'd only been there for a matter of weeks and he started chatting to the neighbours. And David let slip that he'd been in prison for 33 years for a crime that he didn't commit. But his story kept changing. And he told another neighbour that he was in prison for murdering a soldier. So, I know, he's an idiot. So this started to raise suspicion. And then people in the very small town started digging into his past. And they just Googled his name because it's 2018. So you can Google anything. So on Saturday, the 4th of August, this is 6 weeks after he'd been released from prison, Gaut was found dead in his flat, beaten so badly that he could not be identified at first.
Whoa.
He'd been stabbed 176 times and his body was mutilated when he was already dead with a screwdriver. So his fingernails were removed in the attack and couldn't be found anywhere on the scene. Okay, so what happened there? Okay, so that's David.
It was awful.
It was awful. I can't believe it. So after he said he was in prison for murdering a soldier. After the rumours started about Gaut's prison time, a neighbour, David Osborne, 51, learned that he'd served 33 years for killing a toddler. And his neighbour, Kyle Alford, and his partner, Samantha Jenkins, had also found out about his crime via, now, it says The Black Calendar. So this is apparently like a website. Like, I tried to Google The Black Calendar and it just came up with like Black Lives Matter and like all that kind of stuff, and I was like, I don't know what they're on about, but I think it's just a list basically of British offenders.
Okay.
So if anyone cares to look that up or can find out better info than me, then go for it. I've had a Rolls Royce to worry about. I am swamped. So Kyle and Samantha, they go to David Osborne's house and they tell him what they found out, and a guy called Ian Harley, who was 23, was also at the house, and he heard the news. And he said he wanted to chop up David Gaut and flush him down the toilet.
Okay.
I mean, like, when you find out what he did, I suppose that is kind of what you would say.
Yeah.
I mean, he is like the scum of the earth, so fair enough. But David Osborne and Ian Harley got another man, Darren Evesham, who was 47, to join the Vigilante group. But ultimately, Harley was the leader, so Ian Harley. On August the 2nd, 2018, just hours after they had learned about his crime, they lured David Gaut to their house. Gaut was already in his dressing gown and ready to go to bed, but they said, do this in a Welsh accent, hey, do you want to come over and have a look at these DVDs? I'll do it properly.
I've got The Matrix. I've got Lord of the Rings.
I've got The First Wives Club. I got Murder, She Wrote.
I've got the box set of 24.
That was really good. Really good. It's like I was in Christmas. Anyway, enough of this tomfoolery. So they said, hey, do you want to come over and have a look at these DVDs and maybe watch one? So yeah, he agreed. And then when they went to the house, he was held down by Darren Evesham and David Osborne, and Ian Harley stabbed him.
Okay.
So he stabbed him with 2 different knives. And later, once he was dead, his fingernails were removed and he was mutilated with a screwdriver.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 3 different guys did it.
Yeah, basically. So 2 of them held him down and one of them was the stabber. So after they killed him, they fired David Gaut's car to cover evidence. I mean, I don't know what evidence would be in the car, but they just torched that anyway, which if you ask me, is just drawing more attention to a car but
Right.
whatever, I'm not telling you how to live your life. So the defendants later then went to the pub with their friend Michael Lewis, and then later that night they went back to David Osborne's flat, and Michael Lewis was in a chair with a blanket over him, and it appeared to all of those present that he was asleep. So the other three thought that they were in private, but Michael Lewis heard them say that Ian Harley had killed David Gaut because he had murdered a child and they'd stabbed him in the neck. They said that they had carried him back into his flat, but they would have to do something because he was starting to smell. So,
Wow.
yeah. So Michael Lewis then summoned up the courage to dial 999 the next day and reported the murder to the police.
Okay.
So initially, when David Gaut was found, the police refused to admit that he was the same David Gaut that had murdered a toddler.
Why though?
Because they said something like, it's not our place to judge somebody's past, or it's not our place to elaborate on someone's past or something like that.
Okay.
So,
man, that's a complete opposite that happens here.
yeah, I know.
When the police shoot someone, they're like, "Oh, he was this bad criminal." And it's like, well, that
He
doesn't
totally
give you a
did
right
it.
to yeah. Doesn't give you a right to shoot them at all.
Yeah, the British police took the stiff upper lip and were just like, none of your business. Which I think is kind of fair.
Yeah.
Because let's just say, obviously it's a long shot, but let's just say that he was just another David Gaut that was of the right age, and he just got out of prison for something else.
Right. Also, in Wales, there's like 6 last names.
And there's like 7 billion Davids.
Right.
Everyone's called David.
Yeah.
You can tell there's a fucking guy in this called David who murdered him. So the police found the screwdriver in the folds of his dressing gown, and they found bloody towels and sheets inside a black Sports Direct bag. Do you know what Sports Direct is?
It's like a sports store, right? Where you could buy like sports clothes.
It is, but they have mentally big bags that they give you if you buy something.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone uses them to move because they're just so big, and everyone has and there's like a Sports Direct mug which is like 4 pints of tea.
Why do they do that?
I don't know. I think the owner's a bit of a wanker from what I remember.
Oh.
Yeah, he basically spent everyone's pension, and he does really dodgy shit, basically, the owner of Sports Direct.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. And again, I doubt he listens to the podcast. Who have we slandered now? Cliff Richard, Ted Kennedy, guy who owns Sports Direct.
Someday we're gonna get way more popular, like My Favorite Murder or something. We're gonna have like thousands of people listening to these first 20 episodes.
And these people are gonna come for us.
Yes.
We're going to lose all our fortune from being gobbos in the first 20 episodes. Right, literally, it's always me slagging people off, though, not you. So you can take it out of my half. So they found one knife, which was washed and put on a draining board, and the other one they couldn't find. The day of the murder as well, Ian Harley saw neighbours, and he was reported to say about David Gaut, "Don't worry, you don't have to worry about him anymore." The evidence is stacking up. So in February 2019, the 3 men were taken to trial. David Osborne, who is described as, this is harsh, an alcoholic with a low IQ. David Osborne slammed. Darren Evesham helped Harley move the body and dispose of evidence. Yeah. Ian Harley, of no fixed address, was found guilty of murder and perverting the course of justice. And apparently the photos of the murder scene were so gruesome that they just didn't show the jury the pictures. Yeah. To be honest, though, you don't need the pictures. The coroner can come up and tell you what happened to him, and I think that's quite enough.
Right.
Because I always think this, me and you are used to seeing, grim stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But if you just got randomly called up to do jury duty and you weren't interested in crime at all, that would actually be really horrible.
Yeah, I kind of learned that the hard way because, I'll talk to my mother-in-law about murder and stuff, and she's kind of interested, but I've learned that if I get too much into detail, then I've just completely brought down the conversation. The conversation has just turned immediately dark because I see her face. So now I'm I try and look at people's faces before I get too much into detail.
You gauge it. You're
Yeah.
like, okay, you didn't cringe at that. What else can we bring out?
Yeah, I'm just like slowly feeding it in, and they're like, if they're like, okay, yeah, or if they're like, oh my gosh, that's horrible. It's like, I haven't even told
Or
you the horrible part.
or if they dry heave or something, I'm like, okay, let's stop. So, oh my god, this is the man. Can you hear him?
I could hear someone talking, yeah.
Yeah, this is him. Cheeky bastard. Anyway, so Darren Evesham was found guilty of perverting the course of justice and was jailed for 3.5 years.
Only 3.5.
Yeah.
Oh, he didn't actually do the killing.
Well, he held him down and hid the body.
Yeah.
So that's pretty bad.
Right.
Well, David Osborne was cleared of murder after he had admitted to perverting the course of justice and was given 2 years and 4 months. So if you ask me, David Osborne must have sung like a canary. And he must have got out that way. He must have given everything up.
Right.
And that's how he got out of it. Ian Harley, who is the main stabber, he also had a history of assaulting police officers and attacking men that he believed were child abusers. Again, this is pretty rank, but he previously strangled and gouged the eye out of a disabled man who he wrongly believed to be a nonce.
Oh my, what?
So those of you who don't know, a nonce is English slang for a paedophile.
Right.
I think it stands for, I could be wrong, but I've heard that it stands for not on normal something exercise, which means that you can't be let out into the exercise yard because you're a child abuser, so you'll be attacked.
Right. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it stands for like not on normal something exercise. I think. I'll Google it though.
Yeah.
So he was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 24 years.
Okay.
And just to finish off, this is a quote from David Gaut, the guy who was stabbed. His mother, Phyllis Gaut, 77, she said, "To some, David was a monster. He was my son and I loved him." She added, "This man was no better than David. He too was a killer." And that is the story of David Gaut.
Wow. That's a crazy story.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, it's such a difficult one.
He didn't deserve that death.
Torturing is a bit far.
You didn't even know the guy. You didn't know the family. I would understand it if it was like a family member who did that. But when it's just a random neighbor who just heard about somebody doing something, it's like you didn't have any right to do that. You didn't have any. Why did you have such strong feelings toward it?
But yeah, that's my story. I think that was a good theme this week.
Yeah. We have to give a special shout out to our newest Patreon follower, Rebecca.
We do. Yes, our new Patreon, Rebecca.
We appreciate ya.
We appreciate you, girl. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, it's a big deal to us.
A massive.
Because we think that we're the only people who listen to our podcast.
My fucking housemate and best friend doesn't even listen.
Yeah. My husband doesn't.
Yeah. But yeah, great. Thank you so much, Patreon supporters, Emily and Rebecca. You are sweet baby angels.
So thanks for listening to the podcast this week.
We'll see you next week. Hopefully I won't be so drunk and in a better mood.
It's your birthday soon, too.
It's my fucking birthday. And also, we recorded loads and then we released loads. So it was my birthday actually not that long ago in terms of podcast. So it seems like I'm like the fucking queen. Like I've got 2 birthdays, but I don't. I'm going to Edinburgh next week for my birthday with Carly, and that should be an absolute hoot. And I'll let you know all about it when I come back.
Yay, exciting.
Speak to you next week. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Transatlantic Crime this week. If you liked what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe.
And if you'd like to follow us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at TransatCrimePod, Instagram at Transatlantic Crime, and on Facebook with Transatlantic Crime Podcast.
Thanks, bye.